Hello, and welcome to The Cheater's Diary, where we dive into raw, real-life stories packed with emotion and unforgettable twists. If you connect with this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to join us in sharing these powerful stories. Let's dive into today's journey. I'm Lauren Whitmore. 5 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing on the edge of my own unraveling, I'd have laughed in their face. I was the kind of woman people called put together. The one hosting charity galas, remembering everyone's coffee orders, always smiling even when my heart was cracking. But loneliness, it has a way of breaking you down. It chips away at you, bit by bit, leaving you hollow, desperate for anything, anyone, to feel alive again. And then, Ethan walked in. My husband's son from his first marriage. 24 years old, with his father's sharp jawline but none of his coldness. He came back that summer, supposedly to help out while my husband Robert was away on business. But it was his attention that woke something in me. Something I didn't even know I'd lost. I met Robert when I was 32. I still had a flicker of hope for love, though I was worn out from past heartbreaks. He was a corporate lawyer, sharp, powerful, with a smile that could hush a room. I mistook his confidence for passion, his decisiveness for devotion. By the time I realized his heart was full of spreadsheets and cold logic, we were married. Our life in suburban Connecticut looked like a postcard. A colonial house with a wide front porch, hydrangeas blooming every June. But inside, it was like a museum. Everything perfectly arranged, not a trace of warmth. Robert was gone more and more. Business trips, client dinners, golf weekends that stretched into Monday. I told myself it was fine. I had my book club, my yoga classes, my volunteer work. But loneliness is strange. It creeps in, even when you're surrounded by people. You can stand in a crowded room and still feel invisible. Ethan came into my life when he was 14, a skinny kid with wary eyes and a tense silence. I tried to be a good stepmom. I baked birthday cakes, cheered at his soccer games, but Ethan kept his distance. He called me Lauren, never Mom, and I didn't push. He was polite, but it was the kind of politeness that felt like armor. Once, when he was 16, I found him in the kitchen, staring at a photo of his mother. I wanted to say something, to comfort him, but his look stopped me. "I'm fine," he said, voice flat, and walked away. That's my earliest memory of him, a moment that told me he didn't need me. Not then. Then Ethan left for college. The house got quieter. Robert was rarely home. I started noticing little signs, a text popping up on his phone late at night when he thought I was asleep. "Meet at the hotel, 8 p.m. He deleted it immediately, but I'd seen it. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to shatter the perfect picture I'd painted for myself. But every time he left for a trip, every time he left me alone with those cold walls, I felt myself fading, like I was becoming a ghost. Last summer, Ethan came back. Just for a few weeks, between law school graduation and starting a job in New York. He was different. Taller, broader shoulders, with a quiet confidence that made the air around him hum. But it wasn't just his looks. It was the way he saw me. Truly saw me. The first night, he walked into the kitchen where I was scrubbing dishes. "You look tired, Lauren," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "Let me help you out for once, okay?" A simple offer, but the way he looked at me, like I was still someone worth noticing, sent a shiver through me. I told myself it was nothing, just a young man being kind. But then he handed me a coffee, his fingers brushing mine a little too long. My heart pounded. I told myself I was imagining it. He was just being friendly, just Ethan. But those moments kept happening. He asked about the book I was reading, actually listened when I answered. He remembered how I took my tea, no sugar, a splash of lemon. Once, I told a silly story about a yoga class, and he laughed. A real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I hadn't realized how much I'd forgotten what it felt like to be noticed. Robert never noticed when I lost weight, never saw the dark circles under my eyes, never cared that I'd stopped wearing the perfume he gave me because he never complimented it. But Ethan noticed. I was on the porch swing, a glass of Chardonnay in hand. The July air was humid, thick with the scent of jasmine. The sky glowed with sunset. Robert had called earlier, a curt message that he wouldn't be home. Another business trip. "Henderson needs me," he said, not bothering to ask if I minded. He never did. The screen door creaked open. Ethan stepped out, hair mussed like he'd just woken up. "You're out here late," he said, voice husky with sleep. He sat beside me, close enough that I could smell his shampoo. Sandalwood, expensive, not the cheap citrus soap he used as a teenager. "Couldn't sleep," I lied. The truth was, I'd been avoiding the bedroom. The king-size bed felt like an Arctic tundra, the silence between Robert's snores deafening. He leaned closer, his eyes searching mine under the moonlight. "Dad called today," he said, voice flat. "Not coming home again, huh?" The question caught me off guard. The neighbors probably knew about Robert's trips, but hearing Ethan say it out loud, so certain, made my throat tighten. "It's complicated," I whispered. Ethan shook his head, his hand brushing mine on the swing's rope. Warm, heavy. "No, it's not. You deserve better, Lauren." Those words were a spark, not lust, not some cheap fantasy, but recognition. Someone had seen the pain I'd hidden for 12 years. Someone had named it, and in that moment, I knew I was in danger. Because Ethan wasn't just being kind. He was studying me, learning me, and God help me, I liked it. That night on the porch, the air was thick with jasmine and tension. My wine glass trembled, catching the moonlight. Ethan was too close, his breath warm on my cheek. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said, voice low, like a whisper that shattered the walls I'd built through years of a dying marriage. I wanted to cry, to scream, to lean into him and let the world burn. But I stayed still, heart pounding, as his eyes flicked to my lips. I told myself to stop it. I was Lauren Whitmore, the put-together woman, the one who didn't do things like this. But then, under the purple dusk, he leaned closer. His lips were a breath away. "Tell me to stop, Lauren," he whispered, voice rough, part plea, part challenge. I opened my mouth, but stop never came. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "I can't." Our lips met, soft at first, like a question. Then harder, urgent, like we both knew it was wrong but couldn't stop. The swing creaked under us, a steady rhythm like my heartbeat. A distant rumble of thunder broke the moment. We pulled apart, breathing hard, eyes wild. Mrs. Callahan's Yorkie yapped from across the fence, like the universe itself was sounding an alarm. "We can't," I started, voice shaky. Ethan nodded, but his thumb grazed my wrist, where my pulse raced. "I know," he said, but his eyes held a dangerous promise. "But we will." The next morning, I woke with a dry mouth and a sharp ache in my chest. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, too bright for the storm inside me. I half hoped Ethan had left, packed his bags, and gone back to New York, leaving me with my guilt. But when I went downstairs, he was in the kitchen, whisking eggs, like nothing had happened. "Hungry?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder with that easy, familiar smile. I nodded, avoiding his eyes. We ate breakfast in silence, but every time his fingers brushed mine passing a plate, my skin burned. I wondered if he was struggling like I was, or if this was just a game to him. Ethan wasn't always this confident. I remember when he was 17, sitting on the couch, flipping a letter from his mom over and over. His hands shook slightly, but when he saw me, he stuffed it in his pocket and stood. "Just junk mail," he said, voice cracking. I wanted to ask, to understand the pain he hid behind those eyes, but I didn't. Now, watching him stir coffee with that new ease, I wondered if that vulnerability was still there, or if he'd just gotten better at hiding it. Maybe he was searching for something too, just like me. Robert came home early that Wednesday evening, his Mercedes rolling into the driveway as Ethan and I cleaned up after dinner. My hands froze around a plate. "Dad's back early," Ethan whispered, his eyes locking onto mine, dark and unreadable. Robert walked in, briefcase in hand, already talking before the door shut. "Henderson's sorted. Thought I'd surprise you." He kissed my cheek, a dry, perfunctory peck, then clapped Ethan's shoulder. "Good to see you, son." I waited for the ground to crack open, for Robert to see my flushed face or Ethan's too relaxed posture and know something was wrong. But he just loosened his tie and headed for the liquor cabinet, oblivious. That should have relieved me. Instead, it hurt. I was used to lying to Robert, pretending his indifference didn't sting, ignoring the lipstick on his collar that wasn't my shade. But lying alongside Ethan spun a story effortlessly. "Lauren and I hit that new Italian place last night," he said, twirling his wine glass. "You'd hate it, Dad. Too much garlic." A perfect lie. We'd actually eaten takeout on the couch, knees touching, the air between us heavy with unspoken things. Robert laughed. "Smart, remembering my allergy." Ethan's ease with the lie should have scared me. Instead, it thrilled me. Here was someone who could keep up with me, who was willing to guard our secret. Thursday morning, Robert left for the office. The second his taillights disappeared, Ethan pinned me against the fridge, hands bracketing me. "Tell me you've been thinking about last night," he demanded, voice rough. I had, every second. But before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Robert. "Forgot presentation folder. On my desk. Can you bring it to the office?" Ethan's grip tightened. "Ignore it." "I can't," I whispered, pulling away. "He'll come back for it." For the first time, I saw frustration flash across Ethan's face. "Always running after him, huh?" The accusation hung between us, ugly and true. Even now, after everything, I was still putting Robert first. Mrs. Callahan, the neighbor who's been next door for 20 years, caught us gardening that weekend. Her smile made my teeth grind. "You two seem close lately," she remarked, sipping iced tea. Ethan stopped shoveling dirt, his hand tightening on the handle. "Just helping Lauren with the garden," he said, voice smooth. "Yeah," she replied, her eyes flicking between us. "Robert never had much of a green thumb, did he?" The implication was clear. She suspected something, and if she did, others would too, soon enough. Saturday night, Robert's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while he showered. I told myself not to look, but then I saw the name. Elena. The text burned into my eyes. "Last night was amazing. When can we meet again?" The shower turned off. I dropped the phone like it was on fire. Ethan found me in the backyard minutes later, hands shaking. "Lauren?" I showed him the text. Instead of anger, his face hardened with something like triumph. "Now you see," he said softly. "You're not the only one betraying this marriage." And just like that, the last thread of guilt in me snapped. I wasn't the only traitor anymore. I felt free, and it was dangerous. 3 days later, when Robert left for another business trip, I didn't ask which hotel he was staying at. I just waited until his car was out of sight, then turned to Ethan. "Show me what it feels like to be wanted," I said, voice steadier than I felt. His eyes darkened, but he didn't move. "Once we start, there's no going back," he warned. I touched him first. Later, tangled in sheets that smelled of him, I realized I didn't regret it. Not because of love, but because for the first time in years, I felt alive. 3 days after I saw Elena's text on Robert's phone, everything changed. Robert came home one Tuesday evening, not alone. Lauren, this is Elena, he said, voice casual, like he was introducing a new coworker. Elena stood in our foyer, her manicured hand resting on Robert's arm, her smile confident, like she belonged here. The air left my lungs. He wasn't even hiding it anymore. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his eyes meeting mine, and I saw the truth in them. This wasn't just Robert's betrayal. This was a statement. It changed everything. That night, I found Ethan pacing by the pool, the water's light twisting across his face, warped with anger. "He brought her here," he growled, hands raking through his hair. "Like you wouldn't notice. Like it doesn't matter." The fury in his voice startled me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was personal for Ethan. I touched his arm, trying to calm the storm. "Ethan," I started, but he turned, gripping my hand. "Tell me you're done with him. Tell me you'll leave him." His words were sharp, an ultimatum that made my heart race. In that moment, I realized I had to choose. Not just between Robert and Ethan, but between the woman I was and the woman I wanted to be. And for the first time in years, I knew who I wanted to be. 3 days later, I started packing. No drama, no screaming or smashing plates. Just the quiet sound of folding blouses, wrapping my grandmother's pearl earrings in tissue paper, the hum of the ceiling fan, the creak of the house holding its breath. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching. "You're really doing this," he said, not a question. I zipped the suitcase, the sound final. "You knew I would." The truth was, I had no choice anymore. Last night at dinner, I saw the way Elena touched Robert's hand, her fingers lingering too long. I saw the way he looked at her, with a warmth I hadn't seen in his eyes for years. I'd lost him long ago, and the worst part, in the kitchen, suitcase by the back door. He glanced at it, brow furrowing. "Going somewhere?" His tone was casual, like I was just heading to the grocery store. His indifference lit something in me. "Yeah," I said, voice as cold as his. "I think it's time." He blinked. "Time for what?" "To stop pretending," I said, letting the words hang, heavy with everything I didn't say. For a moment, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes, but it vanished, replaced by the calm of a seasoned lawyer. "Lauren," he began, but I cut him off. "Don't." I picked up the suitcase. "We both know this marriage died a long time ago." I waited for an argument, a plea, anything, but Robert just exhaled through his nose and nodded. "If that's what you want." In that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. I moved into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't like the sprawling colonial we'd lived in. The wallpaper peeled at the edges, but the windows let in sunlight, and from the tiny balcony, I could see the river glinting. For the first time in years, I felt like a space was mine. Ethan helped me settle in. He hung my paintings, stocked the fridge with my favorite wine, even bought a silly pink orchid because he remembered I loved them. But at night, alone in my new bed, the weight of what I'd done pressed down on me. I'd left my husband for his son. Who was I to do something like that? Ethan sensed my hesitation. He started staying over more, his presence a steady comfort. But the closer we got, the more I noticed little things. The way his jaw tightened when I mentioned Robert. The way his hand gripped my waist in public, a little too firm. One evening, as we cooked together, I laughed about a memory of Robert. How he once burned eggs in the kitchen, back when we were happy. Ethan's knife froze on the cutting board. "You miss him?" His voice was sharp, not a question. I hesitated. "I miss who he used to be," I admitted. The air between us turned dangerous. Ethan didn't speak, but that night, he was rougher than usual, his touches edged with something punitive. Friends stopped calling. At first, I thought they just needed time to adjust. But then I ran into Margaret from book club at the grocery store. She hurried past the cereal aisle, avoiding my eyes. The truth was, no one wanted to be associated with the woman who left her husband for his stepson. I became a scandal, a cautionary tale. Ethan became my only tether to the world, and he knew it. One rainy evening, I was scrolling through my phone when a notification popped up. A tagged photo of Robert and Elena at a charity gala. They looked happy, normal. A lump formed in my throat. That was supposed to be me. Ethan snatched the phone from my hand, his face hardening. "Why do you keep hurting yourself like this?" I looked at him, suddenly exhausted. "Because he was my husband, Ethan. You can't erase 12 years. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. I erased 18. The silence that followed was deafening. That night, I dreamed of Robert. We were in our old kitchen with the yellow curtains I loved. He smiled at me like I was the only person in the world. When I woke, my cheeks were wet. Ethan was awake, watching me. "You said his name in your sleep," he said, voice flat. I sat up, heart racing. "It was just a dream." He stared at me, face unreadable. Then quietly, "You're not over him." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Ethan stood abruptly. "I need some air." The door slammed behind him. Alone in the bed we'd shared, I finally let myself cry. The next morning, Ethan didn't come back. I told myself he just needed space, that he'd return with that easy smile, maybe with flowers and an apology. But by noon, my phone was still silent. By evening, the fear in my gut turned to dread. I checked my email and saw it. Subject: "Don't contact me." The message was short, brutal. "This was a mistake. I'm back in New York. Don't call, don't write. You still love him, and I won't be second choice to my father." It took 3 reads to sink in. He'd left me, just like Robert, just like everyone. I sat there, in an apartment that now felt like a tomb. The orchid Ethan bought wilting in its pot, petals curled tight like fists. On the 8th day after Ethan left, the doorbell rang. I ignored it, thinking it was just the mailman or a solicitor. But it rang again, insistent, demanding. I wrapped my robe tighter, hair a mess, eyes shadowed, and peeked through the peephole. Robert stood there, stiff as ever, but his hair was grayer at the temples. For a wild moment, I considered not opening the door, but then his voice cut through, sharp and familiar. "Lauren, I know you're in there. Open the door." I took a deep breath, unlocked it, and faced the man who used to be my husband.